My heart stopped when I saw dirt falling onto my little Sophie's face. Our homeowner association president stood over my disabled daughter, shovel in hand, burying my helpless 5-year-old alive. Sophie's wheelchair lay tipped over as she gasped for air, small rocks and dirt filling onto my baby cheeks while she cried for daddy to save her. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. Let me start from the beginning. My name is Marcus Reynolds. My wife Elena and I moved to Sycamore Heights with our 5-year-old daughter, Sophie, last spring. Sophie was born with spinal muscular atrophy, which affects her muscle movement and strength. Her bright eyes and clever mind are trapped in a body that does not always cooperate, but her spirit shines brighter than anyone I have ever known. We chose Sycamore Heights because of its accessibility to Sophie's medical specialists and the good schools. The neighborhood looked perfect on paper: clean streets, well-maintained houses, and a park with adaptive equipment. What we did not realize was that moving here meant dealing with Victoria Chambers, the self-appointed queen of the homeowner association. The trouble started on moving day. I was carrying Sophie from our van when a tall woman with perfect blonde hair and a clipboard approached us. "Welcome to Sycamore Heights," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I am Victoria Chambers, homeowner association president. I noticed your moving truck is parked partially on the grass. That is a violation of Section 13, Paragraph 4. I looked down at Sophie in my arms, then back at Victoria. "We will move it as soon as possible. I just need to get my daughter settled first." Victoria's eyes narrowed as she studied Sophie. "What is wrong with her?" she asked bluntly. Elena stepped forward, her doctor's instinct educate kicking in. "Sophie has SMA, spinal muscular atrophy. It affects her mobility, but not her intelligence or personality. We will need to discuss any accommodations you plan to make to your property. External changes require board approval." That first encounter set the tone for our relationship with Victoria. What she did not know was that beneath my patient exterior, I was a veteran FBI agent specializing in domestic terrorism. My training had taught me to stay calm under pressure and analyze threats, skills I would soon need as a father more than as an agent. Over the next 3 months, Victoria sent us 17 violation notices when we installed a wheelchair ramp to our front door. She claimed it violated aesthetic guidelines. When we widened the garden path so Sophie could access her favorite flowers, Victoria cited improper landscaping modifications. When we put up a special swing in the backyard that Sophie could use safely, she called it an unauthorized structure. Each time, calmly explained the Americans with Disabilities Act and our right to make reasonable modifications. Each time, Victoria found new rules to enforce. My FBI colleagues noticed my stress. "You deal with dangerous criminals every day without breaking a sweat," my partner Frank observed. "But this homeowner association lady has you looking like you have not slept in weeks." "Criminals follow predictable patterns," I explained. "Victoria seems to make up new rules just to target us. I never brought my work home or discussed my real job with neighbors. As far as they knew, I worked for a security consulting firm. A necessary cover for my ongoing investigations." Elena worried that my patience with Victoria would eventually run out. "One day, she will push too far," Elena warned one night after Victoria had sent a notice about the medical equipment visible through Sophie's bedroom window. "Even you have limits, Marcus." I kissed my wife's forehead. "I am not going to let her get to us. Sophie deserves a happy home." Sophie was our miracle. Doctors had warned us that children with her condition often did not live past 2. But our daughter was defying all expectations. She could not walk or stand without support. But she had the brightest mind and the most infectious laugh. She loved to be outside, fascinated by butterflies and flowers. We had created a special garden area where she could sit in her wheelchair and touch the plants. One Saturday in July, Elena was at the hospital where she worked as a pediatric neurologist. I was inside preparing lunch while keeping an eye on Sophie through the kitchen window. As she played in her garden corner, talking to her flowers as if they were friends, my phone rang. A confidential call from the office about a case. I stepped into the hallway for just 4 minutes. When I returned and looked out the window, Sophie was gone. My training kicked in immediately. I rushed outside, scanning the yard methodically. The gate was still locked from the inside. Sophie could not have wheeled herself out, and her motorized wheelchair was still there, tipped onto its side near her flower bed. That is when I noticed the freshly disturbed earth in Sophie's garden and something pink barely visible beneath the soil. Sophie's shirt. I faced armed suspects and diffused explosive devices, but nothing prepared me for the terror of that moment. I dropped to my knees and dug frantically with my bare hands, calling Sophie's name. After removing several inches of dirt, I found my daughter, eyes wide with fear, mouth filled with soil. Struggling to breathe, I cleared her airways and lifted her from the makeshift grave, my hands trembling despite years of crisis training. Sophie coughed up dirt and began to cry. "Daddy," she wheezed. The angry garden lady said my flowers were wrong. "What garden lady, sweetheart?" I asked. Though I already knew Miss Victoria, Sophie whispered. "She said my special plants were against the rules. When I told her you said I could have them, she got very mad. She pushed my chair over and started throwing dirt on me. Cold rage replaced my panic. I carried Sophie inside, cleaned her up, and checked her for injuries. Soil had filled her mouth, nostrils, and ears. Her lungs wheezed from the dirt she had inhaled. I called Elena, who rushed home from her shift. Then I made another call to the FBI field office. "I need a team at my house," I said to my supervisor, "and I need local police for an arrest. Someone just attempted to murder my daughter." Within an hour, our home was a crime scene. Forensic teams collected soil samples from Sophie's clothes, hair, and lungs. Our security cameras, installed after previous incidents with Victoria, had captured everything. Victoria entering our yard, discovering Sophie alone, arguing with her, then deliberately pushing over her wheelchair and shoveling dirt onto her small body with the garden trowel. Most damning of all, Victoria had stood watching for nearly a minute as Sophie struggled under the dirt before walking away, brushing soil from her designer clothes. When police and FBI agents went to arrest Victoria, she was hosting a neighborhood committee meeting in her immaculate living room. The officers handcuffed her in front of her shocked followers. "This is ridiculous," she screamed as they led her out. "I was merely addressing landscape violations. That child is not even supposed to be in this neighborhood." As the police car pulled away, I stepped forward from behind the FBI agents, showing my badge for the first time to my neighbors. Their gasps were audible. "You buried a 5-year-old disabled child alive because you did not like her flowers," I said, my voice dangerously steady, "and you never bothered to check who her father was." The media storm was immediate and intense. Homeowner Association president attempts to murder disabled child made headlines nationwide. Our quiet neighborhood became the center of a national conversation about power, discrimination, and the rights of families with disabled members. The evidence against Victoria was overwhelming. Soil under her manicured nails matched the unique blend of potting soil and fertilizer in Sophie's garden. Security footage showed clear intent. Medical reports documented the soil in Sophie's lungs as doctors treated her for respiratory distress. Victoria's defense that she was merely enforcing landscaping standards and had accidentally covered Sophie while removing unauthorized plants crumbled during cross-examination. When prosecutors played the unedited security footage showing her methodically covering my terrified daughter, the jury deliberated for just 2 hours before finding Victoria guilty of attempted murder, assault on a disabled person, and civil rights violations. The judge sentenced her to 27 years in prison. "You abused your position of authority to target a vulnerable child," the judge said during sentencing. "Your actions show a disturbing lack of humanity that this court cannot ignore." As Victoria was led away, she looked back at me with hatred in her eyes. "My property values," she hissed. "My daughter's life." I replied simply. The aftermath transformed both our family and the community. The homeowner association was dissolved after Investigators discovered years of financial mismanagement under Victoria's leadership. Our neighbors, many of whom had their own stories of Victoria's tyranny, came forward with apologies and support. Sophie spent 3 days in the hospital recovering from soil aspiration in her lungs. The psychological wounds took longer to heal. For weeks, she refused to go outside or be left alone. She had nightmares of dirt filling her mouth. A child therapist specializing in trauma began working with her, using play therapy to help her process what happened. Elena and I considered moving, but Sophie surprised us with her resilience. "The mean, dirt lady is gone forever," she reasoned in her clear 5-year-old logic. "And now have friends here." Indeed, the neighborhood children, once kept away by Victoria's whispered warnings about contagion and special needs, now regularly visited Sophie. Their parents, ashamed of their previous avoidance, organized a community garden project in the neighborhood park with raised beds designed specifically for wheelchair access. Our story sparked change beyond our community. State legislators drafted Sophie's law, which strengthened protections for disabled individuals against housing discrimination. Elena was asked to speak at medical conferences about advocacy for disabled children, and I transferred from undercover work to a new FBI division focused on civil rights violations, a move that allowed me to be more present for my family while using my experience to help others. 1 year after the incident, Sophie willed herself into the special garden built for her 6th birthday. Unlike the small patch where Victoria had tried to bury her, this was a magnificent space filled with butterfly-attracting flowers, sensory plants, and wide smooth paths. Neighborhood children gathered around as Sophie demonstrated how to check for monarch butterfly eggs on milkweed leaves. "Sometimes bad things happen," Sophie told a younger child who asked about the dirt lady everyone's parents whispered about. "But then good people help you, and you get stronger." That night, as I tucked Sophie into bed, she asked a question that had clearly been on her mind. "Daddy, will the dirt lady ever come back?" I sat on the edge of her bed and took her small hand in mine. "No, sweetheart. She is in a place where she cannot hurt anyone anymore. And even if she were not, I will always protect you. That is what daddies do?" Sophie nodded seriously. "Because you are not just a regular daddy. You are a superhero daddy with a special badge." I smiled, thinking of how my FBI training had helped me bring Victoria to justice, but had failed to protect my daughter in the first place. "The badge does not make me a hero, Sophie. Loving you does." As Sophie drifted off to sleep, I stood by her window looking out at our neighborhood. The house where Victoria once lived now belonged to a family with a son who used leg braces, something Victoria would have fought fiercely to prevent. The streets where she once patrolled with her clipboard now featured children of all abilities playing together. Sometimes justice is not just about punishment. It is about transformation. Victoria's hatred had not only failed to destroy my daughter, it had backfired completely, creating a more inclusive community in its wake. 2 years later, Sophie started 1st grade at the local elementary school. The principal, who had heard our story, ensured every accommodation was in place before her first day. As I watched her wheel confidently into her classroom, stopping to greet friends she had made in the neighborhood, I felt both fierce pride and lingering anger. I will never forget the image of my child buried under dirt, fighting for breath. But I also will not forget how she emerged stronger, how justice was served, and how a community can change for the better. When hatred is exposed to the light, Victoria Chambers will spend decades in prison contemplating her actions. The homeowner association she weaponized against us no longer exists. And my daughter Sophie continues to grow and thrive, planting new seeds in the garden where someone once tried to make her a part of the soil. Some people call me a hero for bringing Victoria to justice, but the real hero is my daughter, a little girl who survived being buried alive and still found the courage to put her hands back in the earth and create beauty from it. That is the lesson I have learned as both an FBI agent and a father. Those who try to bury the innocent often do not realize that, like seeds, the human spirit is designed to push through darkness and reach for the light. And Sophie's spirit shines brighter than